The 6.0 update has brought a ton of amazing features, including the community's favorite, the Frogports. They are super useful for logistics, and most importantly, they do so while looking absolutely amazing. The only caveat is that they can be tricky to set up, and even with the help of the amazing bundle, things can quickly become confusing. So I'm here to fix that for you. Today we are going to see in a simple and visual way how they work and how to set them up ourselves. Hello my beautiful viewers. I just wanted to quickly tell you about the GoFundMe that I started recently. It's to help me cover the cost of a surgery. If you would like to know more about it, there is a link in the description where I explain the situation in more detail. Any help will be immensely appreciated, even if it's just sharing it with others. Thank you so much for the support. Now let's get back to the video and learn all about the amazing Frogports. The first thing that we need to understand about the Frogports is that they are not going to handle normal items, they are only going to handle packages. The packages are a new item introduced in this update. Think about them as bundles from vanilla. But in order to work with them, we're going to require a couple of steps first. First, we need to connect the packager into an inventory. In this case, we are using a bolt. Once powered up, it's going to package up to 9 stacks of items. The package counts as both an item and an entity. This means that it can be stored in inventories, it can be moved by belts, it can be pushed around. Once we have the package, the idea is that we want to move it into the Frogport. In this example, we are going to move it with a belt and introduce it into the Frogport with a funnel. Frogports work directly with conveyor chains, so before we do anything, we'll have to set those up. In order to set them up, we need two different items, a chain conveyor and a chain. Once we have those, all we want to do is place the chain conveyor in the places we want to move them. Think about them as just the shafts of a belt, just like you will build the normal belts. Once those are done, you right click with a chain in hand and you right click on the next one. That is going to create a connection. There is two rules that we want to remember. First one is that only one of the chain conveyors needs to have rotational power. And the second one is that one single chain conveyor can have multiple connections to multiple sites. But how do all of those pieces work together? The answer is a clever system based on addresses. Once a package is introduced inside of the Frogport, it's going to check whether the address matches with the Frogport or not. If they don't match, it's going to be spit into the conveyor chain. The system is quite clever, and it's going to find inside of the chain where exactly is the Frogport with the matching address. But if there is no matching Frogport, or the package doesn't have an address, then it will remain on the first chain conveyor that it reaches. There are a few ways to give a package the address. When creating a package with a sign on the packager, the package is going to get the address that we place on the sign. We can also use a factory package to request items. In here we can put the address that we are going to sign it with. This means that when the package is created on the other side as a request for the package, it's going to contain this address that we just set up. The same goes for other methods of requesting. For example, the redstone requester, it can also be set with an address. Or for example, with a stockkeeper, we can also use an address. All of this is to make sure that all of the packages sent are going to find their way. You just need to make sure that set up the proper addresses. And once you do that, for example in this package we are requesting it to the carpenter, we need to make sure that the Frogport attached to it is set to the same address it saved to the carpenter, otherwise it's not going to reach its destination. The addresses only work inside of the chain system. When they get to belts and stuff like this, it doesn't matter what address they have, they are just going to follow the normal create mechanics. The only thing we can do at that point is we can place a filter that contains the address. That means if we place this on a tunnel or we place this on a funnel or something, we can filter out addresses and things like those. The next component that we want to understand before getting into practical examples is the stock link. Think of this item as a way to send and receive information. So if we place, for example, a stock link on top of this packager, because the packager is connected to the bolt, this stock link is receiving information from what's inside the bolt. With that information, we can, for example, set up a 𝐋𝐢𝐬𝐬. So with the 𝐋𝐢𝐬𝐬 in hand, we can right-click into the link, and it's going to set it to this network. And then we go to the packager that is going to receive the items. We place the 𝐋𝐢𝐬𝐬 and we set on the filter what item we are going to request. Once we place the item on the filter, we can already see it's reading the contents of that bolt. So we can come here, we can set the address. For example, here is the carpenter, and if we hold right click into it, it's going to open this menu where we can set how many items do we want to request. And this is how many items should always be here. If it goes under 10, it's going to request more. If it goes over 10, it's not going to do anything. So at this point we can already see it has requested probably the 300 items that were in there. So once it reaches the Frogport, because the Frogport has the same address as this 𝐋𝐢𝐬𝐬, it's going to take it in, it's going to move into the package, it's going to get stored. And now we can see we have 8 of 10 instead of 5. Suddenly there is no more stock there, so it's not going to request anymore. Otherwise we will see it here. So now that we have seen all the components, let's put them all together and let's see a very simple and visual explanation of all of this, how these logistics work, how they handle things and all of that. With the help of a sign and a packager, we are going to send a package to the address called Froggy. Once it reaches the Frogport, it will get introduced into the conveyor chain network. That will move it along the chain until it finds a Frogport with a matching address. The chain network is smart enough to detect whether a matching address is even present at any point of the chain. Otherwise, the package will remain in the very next chain conveyor block, where it will stay indefinitely or a matching address shows up. The next example shows how we can request items with a factory couch. In this setup, we want to always have a supply of 10 stacks of oak planks at the carpenter. So we are going to set a couch connect on the same network as the link back in the warehouse. This is going to detect the warehouse stock on oak logs, and it will send the planks to the carpenter depending on whether there is stock available and there is demand from the carpenter. Unlike the previous example with the 𝐋𝐢𝐬𝐬, the redstone requester are an automatic by themselves. To set them up, we want to fill up the slots with the items we want to request, as well as their amounts. And very importantly, we want to make sure to write the proper address too. At this stage, everything is set up, we're just missing a trigger. As the name suggests, the redstone signal will trigger the redstone requester, so we have hooked it into a threshold switch. If the stock runs low, it will light up the switch and that will trigger the requester to send more stock over to the shop. We can keep the stock of the shop at high levels with the automatic system of the 𝐋𝐢𝐬𝐬 as before, but alternatively, we could use the stock keeper. This is another manual system to request items. Here we can see all of the items stored behind any of the links in the network. We can select whichever items we want, as well the amounts we require of them. Once we click on send, that's going to give a request to the entire network to bring those items over. If we have set all of the addresses properly, we should receive those items eventually. This leaves us with one mechanic that I want to explain, which is how the networks work. Essentially, we can take a stock link and right-click it into another one to connect them to the same network. The same can be done with a factory couch, a redstone requester and all of that. So now that both of these links are part of the same network, we can connect a 𝐋𝐢𝐬𝐬 doing just the same, right-clicking with the item in hand and placing it down. Now what happens is the 𝐋𝐢𝐬𝐬 is connected to both of those links, because they were part of the same network before. This way we can keep adding some more requesters, more links, more stock tickers, and all of them will be part of this network. And just keep in mind we might not always find all of them in the same network, but this is how we are able to see the stock of different balls from this single stock keeper. And I think this is pretty much it for this guide. I hope the explanation was clear enough. I tried to divide it into more digestible bites, and someone ordered it so the information is given where it's more relevant. If you enjoyed it and you like this format, consider leaving a like. I'm trying to move towards this format for my guys and I will appreciate some feedback. I have already thought of several things to improve the structure, so the next one will hopefully be better. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you fangies on the next one. Bye bye!